Appreciate it. All right, well, let's get started, everybody. So first of all, thanks so much for coming today to take a look at the new website and give us some of your feedback. So my name's Ariel Andrea. I'm at the Science and Engineering Library of Chemistry, and I'm one of the members of the LWS team. We also have Dave Luke, who's our chair, Ian Benton from College Libraries on the team, and Jesse Nemec is our wonderful designer of the website. Casey Shacker was also a big part of this work. She's not on the team anymore, but I just wanted to recognize that. So if you have a device of your own, you can go to lws.library.wisc.edu. So it's our current URL, just with LWS in front of it, if you want to see the new site. The other thing I want to mention before we just get into this is that there are still parts of the site that are not functioning. So a lot of the content pages have not been moved over yet. Certain images might change. There's a lot of room for feedback still, though, so please let us know if something looks off. It might just be something that we haven't changed yet and we're going to, but it also might be something we missed. So please let us know regardless. So first off, why are we updating the site? Well, we haven't updated the site in 3 years. So that's one major thing. This web design changes very quickly, and our current site, which I've got right here, is starting to become a little stale, as well as having some artifacts in it that just make it less functional in the web world of today. Also, SDG really wanted to change the back end of our site, because right now our catalog and our other discovery tools run on one system, and the library website runs on a different system. And now, when we make this update, they will be on one unified system, which means we'll be able to integrate more things with the website and the catalog and other discovery stuff. It'll just make everything easier for you as users and for you as web people actually editing the website. Also, just like all of that combined, it was just a really great opportunity for us to start doing an actual redesign. One more thing was we wanted to bring our site more in line with the UW-Madison site. So the current UW-Madison site looks like this. UMark, the marketing for UW-Madison, has set some standards of what they want in design. Some of this is, you'll notice some design choices that we've made based on the UW-Madison site. So that was a big part of it. How did we come to make these changes? Well, we have a lot of data that we were able to look at. We've done user focus groups over these last 3 years. We have heat map and Google Analytics data. And we also have just hallway conversations and information from all of you and other users. So we've taken a lot of that feedback into the building of the new site. And one of the things we did find too when we were still on, when we've been working here for the last 3 years, is a lot of the feedback we were getting, we didn't have a great way to integrate into the current build navigation structure of our site. We didn't have a way to really do what we wanted to do in an effective way. So a redesign really made sense at this time. So I'm going to go through and touch on some of the big changes that you'll probably have noticed and give you maybe a little information about why. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time with questions and feedback. I think that is going to be the most useful for everybody. So the biggest change to the website is the navigation bar. We have completely removed the collections option from the navigation bar, and we've broken up the services navigation section into the borrow and request, research support, and instruction. Now, this isn't to say that our collections aren't important. Right? They're extremely important. However, we have a lot of other ways to get into the collection through find, through locations, borrow requests. All these things will get you into our collections. And based on the data that we had, there were very few links under our current collections navigation. You'll see, not a lot. And people weren't accessing them. These were some of the lowest used parts of our current site. So we took the links from that area and redistributed them in places where we thought people would find them. So, and I guess the way to say that then is the services part of our website, our current site, services. This had really become a bit of a junk drawer, and it just wasn't working as intended anymore. There's a lot of things in here that are not necessarily related. Maybe they're not grouped the way people would think about them. And so that's another reason why we started breaking out the navigation structure. We really wanted to reorganize around our major service areas, which includes the use of the collection, our instruction support, and our research support. And that also reflects campus priorities in a lot of ways. Our locations option, we changed that from libraries to locations. And the reason for that is we're going to have a lot of spaces coming up soon that you can't really call them libraries anymore, since maybe they don't have a circulating collection, but they still are a part of the library. And so we just want to focus on all the different spaces we have without getting bogged down in what is a library and what's not. This lets us link to all of those things and provide access. All right. I'll get into each of these in a second. We'll drill down. The next major change is this red bar at the top. So on the old site, all the login information was under this My Accounts link here, and then some of the information up here at the top. So now we've added this in. This is really a reflection of the new UW marketing design. So you'll see they have their red bar. This is where now on most UW sites, links to UW content goes and links to login. So any type of login information on UW-Madison websites is now up in that red bar. Also, this red bar will be on every page within the libraries. So when you're in the catalog, the navigation here for the website doesn't display anymore, but all of this does. So this is stuff that is universal throughout the entire site. There is still a lot of ongoing discussion about the help section here. We've moved it up into the red bar and out of the navigation because we wanted to make sure help was available across platforms. So in the catalog, on the website, you can get help. But we're still working on what actual content will go under there. We've also moved Ask into this little box here on the side. This is also something that will stay on every page in the library, not just in the library website, but in the catalog and in all of our discovery. Ask is really a major brand investment that we have to connect our librarians with people. So if you're in the catalog, you're on the website, we want you to see Ask. We want you to be able to get Ask. Ask also has new functionality. You click it, panel comes out. This actually puts more information in front of the user on how they can contact us. And they can still chat with us, still works. And that will be the functionality across the website and in our catalog and everything else. So that's new Ask functionality. Okay. So the next part here is the major search area. So this is obviously the most important part of our website. Getting into our collections, how to search the catalog, and all of our other information, our discovery places. This is pretty similar to what we had before. All these links, different options, pretty much the same. A little easier to do some advanced filtering at the beginning of your search from here. We have the banner image. So the banner image can be promotional. Right now in this image, it's more of an aesthetic image, but it could be a promotional image as well. We can put text with it. We have an option here to give credit for to UW marketing as the photo credit, but also we can put text there for what the image is or information about it. It's really trying to create a site. I've had people concerned about the size of the banner image, and that maybe the fold things being below the fold, and that the banner image pushes down. And that is a legitimate concern. We found that on most of our kiosks in the libraries, which are one of our major places where people use our homepage, you can see enough of the site, so it's not pushed all the way down. Folds these days, though, a fold on a screen, they're not the same for everyone. Mobile devices, iPads, laptops, everything, it's different. So saying something's below the fold doesn't mean as much anymore because there's no set spot. We've also found that in user testing groups and things, people scroll. If they see that there's stuff below an image, they scroll. People will scroll forever. If you've ever used Reddit, you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You forget like that there's no end to the page. So people will scroll. It's also, I find this better than the old site because the image is still smaller and we can fit in additional promo on the page than just the single promo on the old site that people actually, since it didn't quite look like there might not be anything below it, scrolling was less likely. So here you can definitely see there's things under it. And our main thing is we're really trying to create an emotional investment, like an emotional connection with our users through the website. We're not just trying to create a site that is a list of functional needs. Functional needs are important on the library website. They're probably one of our most important things, but we also really want people to see themselves in our spaces, to feel inspired by what they're looking at. One of the big things that when we had those, what are they called, the consultants who came, was that we needed more inspirational spaces in our library. Lack of inspiration. Well, inspirational spaces can be online as well. So that's another reason why we are focusing on a lot of imagery on the site. All right. So scrolling down, we've got the new way we are organizing things on the site is in these boxes. This allows for easy changing of orientation if you're on a mobile device or other devices, and it also lets us move and plug things in different ways. So if something's not working on the site the way we want, we can easily change orientation or put stuff in. News and promotional we have options for promotion over on the right side. This could be a news feed. This could be a targeted promotional things that we want to put in. But this is the area where we're focusing on promo items. These three options in the center, databases, Ask, and spaces and equipment, these choices were made based on focus groups and information about what people were searching on our old site. So what we found was that people were not able to find our databases. They didn't understand necessarily what they were or what they were getting into, and they just weren't getting to them quickly. So that is why databases has been pulled out as a service. Once again, Ask, connecting people with our librarians, super important. And then our spaces and equipment, these are some of the top links on the old site, and we wanted to keep them front and center for people to use. We've also been able to pull out some hours of our largest locations and get links to additional hours. So this is kind of just a nice way for people to look. But honestly, we've pushed this down. I know some people feel like we should have the hours higher. We've pushed it down in the middle simply because we want it there. It's good information to have. But we've found through focus groups and other things that users look at Google. They look at Google for our hours. And the LWS has actually took ownership of all the libraries in Google so that we can make those hours stay accurate, because they really do look at that Google sidebar, what are your hours? That's their main way of seeing when you're open. For the classroom links here, these were the other links left over on the current library website, that we still wanted to get in front of users on the homepage. They're important links, it's good information, reading lists, course lists, and because they all kind of focused around student usage, we labeled it as for the classroom. We love feedback on that because it's still not a spot we're like 100% sure it's how it should be laid out. And finally, the footer. The main thing that we put down here that we've had a lot of people wanting for a while is a Creative Commons designation. So this explains how the website and the content from the library is Creative Commons license, and then like certain parts of the site that can't be owned by the users. So we do have that now. Yeah. Oh yeah. And we have the workshops. I forgot it. Sorry. Thanks. So this is where we can show an event feed, and we are still working on the layout for this because we don't always have as many events during certain times of the year. And so when this is nice and full, it will look good. Right now it's a bit white, and we're thinking about how we can just change up how this will look and feel. But we want that information out there for our users. It's additional promotion basically of our workshops and events. So getting into the navigation quickly, The find page is pretty much the same content as we have now. We've pulled out the major discovery options and we've put links under them, these little like grouping links to give people a better idea of what is available under articles, like what is catalog search, and these can provide context, and they can also provide a quick link into a service that that person is accustomed to getting to quickly. So that's why we have these little group links here. The resources by type, these were also all listed on the find list already. We've just tried to provide some grouping for them. And then this resources by subject, this is what gets you to our subject pages. So in the navigation, we had subjects up here and all the subject options. This will get you to the subject options as well. Location is now, it's not just the map. So before when you would go, you would get a bunch of link options and then you would get the map of the libraries. What we're trying to do with locations is to take one interface and include libraries by feature, hours, information about the libraries, and a map location all in one app. And I think it's working, it's getting really nice. So here's the art library. We can see some of their hours. I can click on it. I get an image of where they are located on campus. And if I click the map, it'll actually open the map of the campus. I get their website. So this will take me quickly to their website. So no more finding it on the map and then trying to find the link to the library's website. I know that the old map kind of is annoying in that way. And then information about the location. Over here, you can actually do some searching. You can see by date, see when things are open. You can see libraries that are open now. It immediately changes that. And we can do features. So places with a book scanner and a cafe. I think this is not fully working. Yeah. So color copier, cafe. You will be able to select multiple ones and have them work. This is still a work in progress. And then additional links over here. All right. Borrow and Request has become the place where we have our information on how to get our materials. We're still working on some text for these links because some of this is new content. Research support. This was really started by Jean Ritter Hansen when she was on the LWS team a few years ago and then at Steenbach Library. And it eventually became the current site. We have a page called Researcher Support. And this page has become navigation, and we have taken these and broken them into pages. There's going to be a lot of new content on this because we have a lot of growing services in this area that we really weren't able to highlight on the old site. And so this will allow people to get into our more scholarly communication services, research data services, as well as reference and subject support across all subjects. And then we have some quick links over here for some of the major services that people expect, like citation managers, subject librarians, the grants information collection, things like that. Instruction support is similar. On the current site, we have an instructor support page that kind of mirrors the research support page. And we worked on this with the Teaching and Learning Office, Ian did, and these are the main links that are currently on that instructor support page, as well as additional links over here on the side to learn more about Teaching and Learning Office and things. But focusing on our COM A and COM B requirements and how to get someone into your classroom, all of this is important content. And we're now pulling it out in navigation. And finally, the about, very similar to what we had before. Similar links, news, the master plan, all that fun stuff. Right. So the final thing I'll note is that we are planning, when we start the upgrade for the site, we have to freeze our current website. It will freeze at noon on June 28th. The reason for the freeze is we will be moving content during that time. There's a lot of new pages and stuff we have to create, and we don't have a way to create them now in the new site and have them remain when we go live. So we have to do that during a freeze portion. So any changes you make once we do the freeze to the current site, when we go live with the new site, they won't be there. So we'll talk to web editors about that more. But there will be ways for you to maintain your stuff. It's just, we will have to do this freeze. And the go live, we're currently tentatively hoping will be Tuesday, July 16th. So the freeze will last about a couple weeks. All right. Yes, Ian. Yes. Yes. Okay. So we could definitely show a branch library site. These are still a little more a work in progress. Can I just do /college? Will that work? So this is the branch library site. We have the information about the site over here with the map and contact information, social media. Navigation is here and also under the drop down here. So you can get to the navigation to your site. The main links like before, how the 2 columns of links for the pages, they're still here. And then you will be able to plug in boxes, kind of like you do now on the site with a spotlight for your blog, for featured items in the catalog, for a photo feed, that kind of stuff. But the actual styling on the site, we're not completely done with yet. But these links you'll be able to customize. You'll be able to customize some of your, all these boxes below. Yeah, or add more. Yes. Will do. Okay. Sorry about that. So the question was, can we see a small or a library site, an individual library site? So that's it. I don't have as much to show for these though, because like I said, they are still a work in progress. So other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Yes. So the question, correct. So the question is, in the operation hours list, is there possible to have additional text so that we can see when there's special types of, like the law library is often closed only to law school students during finals week? And the answer is yes, we'll be able to do stuff like that. You'll see down here, the Zoological Museum says closed noon to 1. This all pulls from our API, and we have the ability to add like alerts and special information and special text for those kind of things. So those libraries, if they tell us when they have special hours, we'll be able to put that in the catalog or in this list. Yep. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the question is the logins up here at the top. If we log in up here, are we logging in across other campus tools? So it will work the same way it does now. So if I'm on my computer and I log into the library, if I log into anything using my NetID, for that web session, my computer knows that I'm logged in with my NetID. So it's the same functionality. So that's logging in through the, so he said sometimes committee minutes, to view them, you have to log in separately. Those committee minutes are probably housed in our wiki, and the wiki has a separate login. So there is no login to the wiki now on our website. You have to go to the staff page, and it will be the same. So yeah, Ian, go ahead. Okay. No, it's okay. So the question is for, and let me pull up the a branch library site again. So the question was, why on the branch library sites do we not have the big search box like we do on the homepage? And the answer is because we don't now. We they don't have the search. I think the main reason for that decision is, and correct me if I'm wrong, LWS team, but is because these pages are really focused on the space and the special things about that space. And so people tend to go to these pages to look for something about College Library, not always to search the catalog. If they want to search the catalog, though, it's still a quick way to just get to it through Find on here and on the new site, so they can still get to there through Find. As for the heavy lift, so the other question was, how much should individual sites think about how they need to rearrange their content based on the new layout? I don't think you need to too much. The new layout is for the individual sites. Like if we drill down into the pages that your site has, they're very similar to the way the current sites are laid out. It's just, a whiter background with the red bar at the top, new navigation, that kind of thing. We haven't gone through everybody's site and thought about their information architecture for them. And if you're concerned about that, you can let the LWS team know and we'll work with your site. But like I said, these pages aren't fully done yet, and so I can't really say necessarily what would be a good, like what changes would change the information architecture of a current site, but I don't think it would. No.
And then the short answer to that, you're not expecting for local sites.
Yeah, Dave says we're not changing the information architecture for local sites at this time. Yeah, Michael. Right. Okay. Yeah, so that was just Michael's comment that he appreciates the flexibility of not having the big search on the image on the local sites, because that's typically not why people are coming to his business library website. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll Ariel sort of alluded to it. It's one of the things we thought about when we you see that where the catalog search is on every single page. And years ago we made that when we went through the last update. And by including, I think we settled on by including Find as the first choice in the navigation bar, that gave you a quick link back to those tools. And that including of every page, just like Ariel said, on the local site, really about the space and search not on the local site, but we want to focus on the local site. And there's certainly an argument for putting catalog search on every page. And I think if you look at Michigan, for example, I know that they do that. And there's a number of libraries that do that. But it wasn't conscious.
So I mean, Dave said, I'll say to the mic that the main thing Dave said was that we've thought about this for a long time, and when we did the first redo of the site 3 years ago, we didn't put the search box on the individual sites because people are coming there mostly for the services and spaces of that site, and less about search. So any other questions? Yep. So the question is, will there be like an index of the new site? No, we don't have a full site map. We haven't pushed that live, or we haven't made one for the site. Our site is extremely large and deep, and making a sitemap for it would be, I don't think it would be useful to patrons. But I think with the new navigation structure, people should be able to find what they need. I don't think people really go to look for sitemaps as much anymore. We haven't had that in our user groups. Well, that's fair. I mean, but there is an option to still search our site. And so we find that gets people, if they don't know where to click, searching the site tends to get them what they need. Yep. Yeah. So June 28th, the site will freeze at noon. Yes, so that will give people any time that they wanted to push something quickly live, they can do that. And I guess the other thing I'll say is you'll still be able to edit the site while the freeze is in place. What the freeze means is that as soon as the new site goes live, anything you edited between the freeze and the go live will not be reflected in the live site. So if you're going to make edits during the freeze, just keep a little tally of what you've changed, and then you can quickly go back in and make those changes to the site. But people will still be able to see live things during that. Yeah. 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 So the question is, do we have any data on find and borrow and request maybe being conflated in some way, and patrons maybe having trouble with that? We don't, because it hasn't been live yet. We have done some user testing with the new layout, and people seem to understand that this was more finding, if they click find because they wanted to find an article or a book or something, this gets them where they need. The borrow and request is obviously more about the physical materials getting places or doing interlibrary loan requests and things. If someone clicks on this and it's not what they immediately want, our site, I think, is a lot more scannable now for quick, like I don't see where to ask for search an article, and they'll try again. We are going to be heavily monitoring the use of these new navigation structures, because if they're not working as intended, it's much easier for us to make changes now than it was. Better infrastructure for that. Yeah, go ahead, Dick. Okay.
But you look at look at search. We also look at questions that are look for us to track.
Yeah, so we'll also be looking at, Dave said that we'll be looking at help desk questions from chat, from all of you giving us your feedback on and the search box on the website, so that if you're seeing patrons having trouble with that, like understanding that functionality, we want to know. So, Ellen? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So that's Dave's fault. He was supposed to fix that for today. So thanks, Dave. Ellen's comment was, how are we working with content experts as we develop these new navigation structures? And the answer is we were. So Ian helped with this one a lot as someone who does a lot of information with borrow and request and as a helping patrons. But we also talked to Albert, didn't we? Did we? You did? Yes. Okay. So yes, because we all kind of took ownership of a few of these to do it, and so Ian did talk to Albert and some others about the layout of this page, and like what links made sense, what text made sense. And so we do still need to do a little more of that for borrow and request. But the links on borrow and request were also, we had a lot of data on what was being clicked and needed. And so this one was it was difficult, but it was also a little clearer because there wasn't all new content. For instruction support, like we said, we did work with teaching and learning. For research support, we worked with, we used the Gene's research support page, and then we did bring it to the cell research and support people, and we brought it to the research, what's it called, RSI, Research Support Incubator team that has humanities, social science, and science folks on it, and got feedback in that area. And once again, like I said, we're still wanting to like get feedback on how these work. So
In terms of like
yeah, so we want to know, like, we want feedback. So, yeah. Yeah. So yes. So that I think is really good feedback. So right now the borrow and request links that we took were mostly from the current site. But now that we have that new archival login, yeah, it is under the login option up here, archives and special support. This is also not set as to how these things will be labeled. So don't get too hung up on that. But yeah, that could go here. There is a focus on the physical materials checkout, but there's also the interlibrary loan as well. So yeah, that is a definite piece of feedback. Yeah, Dave?
yeah, so I agree. That's a good point. Some of the changes in navigation are well, the library website is really bad. So that but some of the things like research support and support for us, some of it was about putting something there that we put once people see it there, and now we have to put it. Sometimes we would wait until we wait for or we put it in. We realize in this case, we need a good place to put a place that other people can start creating content. So our request is that
Yeah. And so what Dave is saying, just for the mic, is that a lot of the work that LWS did with the new layout is to give people the opportunity to see where content could now go, maybe create new content, because we typically aren't in the role of creating content around services that aren't ours. We want it from the people who do it. We want their content. But on the old site, there was a lot of services and support that people didn't know how to create content for it because there was nowhere to link to it. There was nowhere to hook it in. And that was especially true for our research support stuff. So yeah, go ahead. hmm It's exactly the same. Yes. So any form on the library website can be edited. If it's like a minor edit, you can send it to LWS and we'll fix it. But the request to purchase form is owned, like most of the forms are owned by the service that runs them. So like interlibrary loans form, we wouldn't just go change the form without that being signed off by interlibrary loan. So who owns the request to purchase form would probably be, yeah, that would be something we want to talk to you about with people in collections and have or people doing acquisitions maybe, and get those people on board with the change before we made any big changes to forms. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. So the comment was that if you can, like right here, that kind of thing. If you have the option to include information, that it should be included. We'll take that feedback. I can't say that we'll always work on it though, because we really don't want to fill the site with stuff that the more stuff you put on a page, the less easy it is for users. First, people are really good at ignoring content that they think is extraneous. And so we want to be really, really selective with the links and content that we put there so that it's the useful stuff. But I get what you're saying though, like having more can be good. So we need a balance. Yeah.
Put everything in there.
Yeah, Nola? Yeah. Yeah, I will. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the question is, one, the idea of taking some of this promotional text, so the text below the image and maybe moving it above so that people see there's text so that they would scroll down more. But also it might break up the amount of color. So we have like a lot of very clear images, very colorful images all grouped together at the top. It can be a bit of a, whoa, like an onslaught on the eyes, right? I don't disagree with you on that a little bit. Like I really, as for the moving of this, we could certainly test it. We'll talk to look at the design and whatnot. As for the colors, there's some other images we have in here, and like for this one, like I didn't like how the oranges were like lining up with the other images, and there was just what is another one? I think we're gonna have to be careful with what images we select. So this one's a little more plain, and so it's a little less busy feeling to me. But maybe dimming the image, like you said, that kind of stuff, it's certainly possible, and it's something that we'll look into. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Mhm. Absolutely. So we are, so Nola was just mentioning also that as far as our imagery, we want to make sure we're very inclusive in the imagery that we use on the site, especially because we have a lot more imagery now. Um, that's part of it. But what I will say is that we are trying to be extremely mindful of that. And right now, there are still some photos on the website that we're using right now, kind of as placeholders that aren't meeting what we want them to do. We want what we want to display and show people. But yeah, we want to show our spaces, and we want to show our spaces in an inclusive way. I think that's really important. Yeah. So there's a link to the library directory, but so for campus, you would go to the library, to the campus website, and then go to the directory. I mean, we're the library. No, we're going to keep that on the campus directory will stay on the campus website, and the library directory will be on the library website. Yep. Yep. Oh, cool. Okay.
So sorry to go back to borrow and request, but
No,
that
please.
label confuses me. Just putting it totally out there.
That's fine.
So on borrow and request, if you scroll down, there's course reading lists and course reserves. Is the expectation that students will go directly to borrow and request for their course reading lists and their reserves? Or I guess I sort of think about both of those items as being more of a service that we offer to instructors. And so maybe it's the instructors who should pass that along to students. I'm just trying to think through ways that people might be confused,
Yeah.
like I am, when they get to the site.
So will that mic then go into the? Okay. So I'll just repeat the question just in case. The question was borrow and request, the name of it maybe is confusing, and that, she did hear it. Okay, great. So my response to that is we're going to test it and see how borrow and request works. I think that's the big one. As for these links here, no, I don't think this going to borrow and request and then have people click on course reading lists and course reserves is going to be the main way people get to that content. I think students who get to that content are probably going to have a link through Canvas, or they're going to get it from their instructor. And on the homepage, we do have some of this information that students might see. It'll also be linked on individual sites because they have their reserves and stuff linked up on their pages, but also under instruction support. This is where we have information for instructors. And I think the borrow and request stuff was more for the students getting the stuff. So we tried to separate that, that information. Do you have anything else to say about that, Ian? No? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, to that last point, I guess
Yeah.
I see under course reserves, it says place materials on reserve for your class. To me, that's not speaking to
No,
the
it's not.
student
I'm
perspective.
wrong on that one.
Okay.
This is the one that's for students. We tried to so currently there's a course reserve page that has like the first part of it is for students, and then you scroll down and the second part is for instructors.
Gotcha.
And the way we tried to handle it now is we broke it up into two new chunks, new pages, and I think that's what this is reflecting.
Okay, cool.
So, but the main thing is, no, I don't think going here is going to be the main way people get to it. It's just things need to live places, and that this is where it was living before, and it still makes sense to go there. But like I said, we are willing to test it and see how it works and get feedback on if people aren't finding what they need. Yeah, Ellen.
And then isn't it also under, back on the homepage, when you're scrolling down under for the classroom?
Yes, it is. It's right there. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and
Well, just the request.
because this is for this was targeted stuff for students.
Okay.
So
Okay, so yeah, the request and then also the reading lists and reserves.
Yeah.
So like whether you're teaching in the classroom or being in a classroom as a student. So both are there.
Yeah, we have the students access your course readings, instructors place your materials on reserve, and then we have the subject and course readings. So, yep, Susan.
Hi, thanks for the forum.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
My comment has to do with promotion, news, announcements, events, and I think it would be helpful if that was labeled as opposed to presenting an ambiguous photograph that might or might not entice someone to click on it.
Okay.
And of course, I'm in a department that does events and that does exhibits, and so this is of interest, to my department, but also I think maybe, how did you work with the head of communications or the communications department in this also?
So, Dave, do you want to?
I talked to Natasha about the layout of the homepage. Very, So we talk to Natasha quite often about the layout of the homepage and how we our philosophy about how to promote news. So so to that question, we have Natasha in our in our communication channel often on this. Sorry, I'm thinking about your earlier question.
Well, what
Yeah.
I guess what I'd like to say is I really like the amount of different promotional options we now have the ability to show on the page versus like the one big one you'd see on the current page, right? And then you'd have to scroll down to see more. This feed here could go longer if there's more stuff. I'm just saying that out. But you're saying you'd like something that maybe said news or something like actual text on the page. And I don't disagree. Like I think that could probably that might be something we do. The one thing is this might not always be news. It might just be a featured resource or something if there wasn't any news at the time. Also, whenever we label things as news, it's one of those things people just go and like don't look at, which is frustrating. But I guess we were hoping to maybe just like throw it in as part of the site, and it wouldn't. People are really good at just ignoring stuff. So I'm not sure. Yeah, it is. I am generalizing, and yes, we do. So I also think our workshops and events part down here could be. I think we need to. We're still thinking about how that's going to look. Go ahead, Dave.
So the one thing I'll say too is that this is a large. I think there's a larger question here about how do we communicate not just our services but our events and the things that we want to get out in front of people. And this is one channel for that. And there are other channels for sharing any particular event or announcement or service that we want to promote. And we've talked to Natasha often about, there's Facebook and there's Twitter and there's the library screensavers and there's print and there's the library website. And our thinking, at least in terms of the library website, is that they don't click on something that says news. I mean, we have evidence of that kind of action, but that if we can make it interesting to them, either through the caption or the title or the image, that we can potentially get more people to find out about this material that way. And really the problem for some of these things is that we don't have any content to point at for some of the stuff that we want to promote. So it's about attacking this problem of alerting our audience to the stuff that we want to promote through all the different channels, including the LWS. Can I give an example of a place where we don't have content? So
For an event.
For an event?
Or for a promotion.
For something. So for example, we often want to promote our services or a really simple example. We have hundreds of databases. And so one of the things that we would like to promote is here's some databases that you might not know about. We have no content that we can use to promote a particular database. We'll have to create that. And sometimes we've done it with Scopus, for example, where we have a banner image that I think we've used on the website, but I know we've used on digital signage and we've used on the screensavers. But thinking about spaces, people, services, events, databases, if we want to promote those things, we have to have content around it. So promoting a particular database requires us to identify the database we want to promote, get an image that we can use in all the different media that we'd be promoting on, and some kind of a story around it. It doesn't have to be a long story, but a paragraph that says, here's why you should care about Scopus. Because an image on its own isn't really going to do what we want. If they click on it in Twitter or Facebook on their website, why do I want to use Scopus? So there's an example.
So Nola's had her hand.
Let's get this up.
So I have a question again. Could we just scroll to the top
Yep.
of the home?
Can do.
So I'm interested in hearing if your efforts to get user feedback and through other sources of data has at all taken the perspective of advocating for certain things that maybe your user data hasn't said the usage is related to. And I say that because overwhelmingly, yes, undergraduates, right? Um, if I'm a new faculty person and I come here, you know, if I'm an international scholar here, you know, um, the different departments have special groups, and if every image is of a young undergraduate, that's fine, we get it, but I'm looking at the community of who represents the users. And so I'm curious. It's just like the same with the sciences, right? The sciences, the research, and then advocating for the humanities, right? We have
Yep.
a commitment, we have a value there. So I'd like to hear in what instance did you make a conscious decision about the website that was informed on the library's position of being a steward or advocate, right, for a user that isn't based upon all the data? Because we know who's in the sea, right? So
Right.
can you tell me a little bit more about what
Yeah.
conscious decisions were
So
value based?
I can talk a little bit about that. So I will say that so when we do user groups, it's almost always undergrad, right? That is the case. I have shown this to a few other graduate students as well, but that once again, things that are not related to the data, the things that we just know that we should be doing. The research and support and instruction support were major ones that we didn't necessarily have direct data that these needed to be created, but we know that faculty and instructors and the whole research side of our institution, the graduate students, there was no clear tag for them in the current website to get into services for them. Not to say that the research support doesn't have services for undergrads too, but it really is more of a tag like, hey, this is where you should go. The imagery on the site, it's still not set. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. No, it's a good suggestion. And I mean, we don't do everything that the user groups say. I think the main thing that the user groups have shown us are just like tendencies. And like some of the big ones is that, they don't use, most undergrads use Google to look for our hours. Like things like that. We learn about their tendencies, but we don't build the site around them. I mean, we do have to give them like, we, we want them to do what we want them to do, right? We have to kind of funnel that. So I do think we have been much more mindful about what instructors and staff and faculty need in this new design. I think the older design was much more focused on undergrad. It was very simple. We put a lot more links back in the website that we didn't have before. Dave, do you want to say any more about it?
Yeah, I think your examples of research support and instruction support is perfect because, well, for one, it is very, very difficult to get feedback from faculty, and that's not to say that we shouldn't try, but it is very difficult. So one of the things LWS does is we look to especially the public service groups within the libraries to provide feedback for this is an area that we support that the library website doesn't reflect. And that's where research support and instruction support was a direct result of conversations and feedback from library staff saying this is an area that is not reflected in our website that needs to be reflected because these are areas that our user base, not our undergraduates, but our researchers and our grad students and our faculty, these are services that we provide them that we don't have a way to our site is not organized around that.
Yeah.
So those two in
Also-
particular, going at a highest level of navigation is a response to PSMT and operational leadership team and individuals who are in charge of various committees or just representing, particular groups said, this is something we need. And this is something that we've been talking about this particular lineup for years, trying to find a way to organize it and put it together. And again, so these are, as Ariel said, some of this is based on just hallway conversations where somebody said, I had this conversation the other day with an instructor and they said, well, how do I find this content? And we keep all of that information and we refer back to it as we're talking about these things. But it's not always based on data. In fact, a lot of these decisions aren't always based on data. They're based on PSMT saying, why don't you have this?
very different, different physical abilities. For example, I mean, how wonderfully affirming to say, I'm recognized as a part of the community. And that's just not like you did a great job in explaining how you've gotten feedback because the email had went out. But I would just say, I don't know who's here from the equity and diversity group, that this is where you can step up and represent for that representation in some kind of way for our complexities of user groups.
We totally agree. And actually, Ian and Jesse have been going around taking new photos because we've been using the UMark photo library, and there really isn't a lot of diversity in that photo library, unfortunately. And we really wanted some. Well, I won't go into all the details, but we wanted certain images, and we couldn't get any. So they're actually going through and taking new photos of our spaces. And so getting photos of our spaces that are inclusive is extremely important to us. And also, I just want to touch on I know as a science and engineering librarian, and I did say, like, I worked with the cell people to help build this part of the site. We purposely worked on it with a generic focus of research services. So I know there are some science imagery here. This is imagery that Jesse has plugged in, and we're working to try and get ones that are more neutral so that everybody sees their discipline in there. So right now, this one's like chemistry stuff, but that's just because we're still working on something. So these ones probably not that often, but they could. These ones maybe more often. These banner ones that are on the navigation pages. These, yes, all the time. So actually, Tom had his hand up for a while. You're done? Okay. Never mind then.
Thank you. If the images are going to be fairly static, maybe it wouldn't be as difficult to craft an image for new databases. It could be
So that
it could be an animated piece
So
of
that
sorts.
is, when
Even
Dave
a
was
movie.
talking about the new databases, that would be like a promotional image, and those images are going to change a lot because we're always going to be promoting new things. So for new databases, we want new images all the time.
Well, you could create a display portion for new databases, new promotional things, and then just drop down and put in 2 or 3 lines of text about the piece that you're promoting
Yes.
and retaining the same image so that each time somebody goes to that page, they know exactly where to go to see new information.
Okay.
And then
That's good. We'll make note of that.
thank you.
Thanks. Susan again?
What's the thinking on using so much of the prime real estate for a photo at the top?
So this is a question we get a lot, and I think, so there's 2 reasons. One is it is a photo that can be promotional. So we can use it to give prime real estate to any promotion that we want, just like we have now on the website. The other reason is it creates an aesthetic expectation and like a modern quality to our website that users expect, and also that we want it to create this emotional response. So when you come to the website, you should look at it and it should invoke an emotion of like, I want to be there. I want to go in that space. I want to do this. If I go to a website and the first thing I'm greeted with is a list of links, I don't feel inspired. I feel like it's tired. I mean, it's functional. It's utilitarian, and in some ways that's good. But for our homepage, we wanted it to be this emotional response that will inspire people. And I think that's why we are open to smooshing it a bit. Like there could be times when the banner image maybe isn't as large. But I think we are also devoting full real estate to the search box, right? The search box takes up half of that, and the other half is promotion. So we're really doing search. Search is getting like your eye goes to search, and then there's additional promotion. But that's what I would say. Why?
I think using a photo is so subjective that, I mean, I'm looking at, it might attract, I don't know if having an emotional connection with a photo. It just seems to me like such a subjective thing to try to do, as opposed to providing more utilitarian content above the fold. That's how I use websites.
Right. Well,
So-
and I will also say, like, and I did say that, I mean, there is no fold anymore. We can't look at treating a website as above or below the fold anymore, because people are viewing it on so many different, like, we have data on how many people look at our stuff on a phone, on a tablet, on different screens at different resolutions. The fold is all over. There are some pages where they will see, when they get to the website, that's way too much, but they will see that much. And there are places where they will only see that, right? It really just depends. And so we can't design that way. I wish Jessie was still here, because she would have more to say about why she made this decision. But Dave can maybe speak to it a little more.
So it is absolutely that a conscious decision on our part to do this. And as you say, there's another way to do this, and another way to do this is more on a functional side, where there's more links visible, there's more there's more sort of less pictures and more get me to put more stuff here so that I can scan the page and find the thing that I'm looking for, right? And so it is not to say that that's in no way are we saying that's a wrong way to do it, because it is a different way of doing it. And it is preferred by certain users. We know that, and we get feedback on that. We also get feedback from users who like this kind of presentation. And we've chosen this presentation mainly because when we have a homepage that has more links on it, and this was evidence from 4 years ago, the data that we used to make that change, that we had something like 126 links on that home page. And I mean, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but well over 100 of them were never, ever clicked on. And so that's real estate that we are devoting to words that people have to scan over to find the content they're looking for. And it was our conscious decision to say, let's dilute those 126 down to some lower number, 40 or 30, to the things that people are actually coming to our homepage and looking for. And then we use the rest of the space to promote the things that we want to promote. And some of that is creating a connection with the user, with our staff, putting a face on the services that we provide. So it is a conscious decision we make. We do get feedback on this every time throughout, we always get feedback on this, that why do we have so much space used for images? And some of our choices as we did this, we've reduced how much we've done for images, nothing we've shown here, but some of those banner images, we've actually given options to editors to reduce how big that banner image is. But we'll talk to the editors about that.
Up front here.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Minda Mauer, and I'm a practicum student at College Library. Is it possible to show the mobile view of this? I pulled it up on my phone so you can see what the students are going to be seeing.
So I do not believe the full mobile stylings are done yet.
No.
So, but I can smoosh it a little bit here. Jessie's still working on that.
Yeah, so the mobile, Jessie designs for all. It's one of the things we do is we look at this stuff on the different, but Jessie knows that there's some things in here in terms of order and placement and how they react, but she'll have that worked out before it goes live. You did say something there at the very end. You said how the students are going to see it. They do. That's absolutely correct. They use their phones. They're walking around campus, but we do have stats that show us that the number of people using mobile devices to look at our site is actually very low. And that most people viewing our sites are still viewing it on a much larger screen. But that's not to say we don't pay attention to how it displays in mobile, and Jessie is working on how it displays in mobile. So I would not it's completely fine to look at it and say, hey, Jessie, this isn't working this way. She needs to hear that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that when you look at the mobile display, there are things in there we know will be fixed before we go live.
And it's not super low. The mobile display gets used not just in a phone, but on a tablet. And that is actually higher. And also a lot of the data that we collect about what type of device people are using, if your browser blocks that kind of information being passed, we don't get that data. So I know people use their phones for this. Also, the mobile scrunching and the way that all works is also tied into accessibility. And the accessibility, that's another big reason why we've done a redesign of the site, is because we've been able to do a lot more accessibility features and standards within the new site than we were able to. So Jesse is still working. Oh, she's got it.
Yeah, just to go back to directories for a little bit, I kind of looked at the directories yesterday,
Uh-huh.
and I assume that we're pulling information about people from somewhere else, but there are a lot of omissions and a lot of people who no longer work here
So,
are there.
okay.
And then about searching by department or subject area, when I put terminology into the search box for that, it just went to the long, long list that you have to scroll through. I was wondering if there are going to be some keyword options for searching by.
Yeah, no.
Part of that directory listing, I'll say, is connected to HR upstairs and also the campus. There is a disconnect between what the campus directory says and what our directory says. I say that because I do the updates for facilities for the libraries. So when I say that this space is no longer an office, it's it's now a conference space where the people go. And so so I have to look, and sometimes I say there's names there of someone who's retired, or either there's a name there that we don't have. It's connected to what we do here in the library, so that's an HR thing to address that listing.
So I can say the way our directory works. So the current staff directory on the library website is through a database that we maintain, the LWS. It talks to the library website, and we have a thing with HR where they are supposed to go in and remove people who retire, and that doesn't always happen, or it doesn't always happen in a like the day that person retires, right? Like it's not always the most timely thing. We need to be like if you see someone in there that shouldn't be in there, we try to keep track of it too, so that we can go in and remove them. But HR and LWS are trying to find a better workflow for that to happen in a more timely way. Yes, and non-GLS libraries aren't through HR, so we have to be told by them. And if they don't tell us, people sit in there for a while. As for the department list, this has always been a static list, and these departments have changed so much, and like LWS doesn't have the bandwidth to go through and edit the content in here based on what changes. We need to be told when things change. Because this isn't our content. This is content by those departments. So if those departments aren't telling us that people have left or that things have changed, it won't get changed on the site. The subject search, the subject librarian search, we are working to make that a little more dynamic.
Okay, yeah, one of my suggestions was just going to be to maybe remind people to go in and actually update for their own departments or areas in connection with the new website so that it is more current.
We will do some feedback, like get some stuff out there to people to get some stuff. Unfortunately, people can't update it themselves on the LWS. We wish it could be that way, but the way the database works, it's really funky and it's just easier. It would require training for people to be able to edit it. And so we just do it and just tell us and we'll make the change right away. And as soon as we make the change, it's live. So yes, and I'll mention that right now. Any other feedback you guys want to give us at the end of this or later in the weeks, months, whatever, LWS, that's the email us and that would go to our team. That's how that'd be great. Go ahead.
Quick question about going back to Susan's question about the real estate dedicated to visual images, whether they're static or moving. And maybe it's more for an engineer, because whether you're looking at a laptop or a notebook or on your phone, you, on one hand, you had primarily text, and on the other hand, you had all of these wonderful visual images. Is that creating a bigger demand and a draw on the power for the device that you have? I mean, what does it take for the images behind you to keep going as opposed to just textual?
That I will say is not something we have considered, and I think that it is not, I think it is negligible in terms of modern browsers. If people are using a modern browser, an updated browser, the functionality of our site should be fine no matter how many images or text is on there. If you're using something that's older, I mean, we're only keeping the site up to date with modern browsers. So I think it is not an issue. But thanks. Yeah, Pamela?
Hi, Ariel. Thanks for
Hey.
a very well spoken justification for many of these decisions. What I'd like to know is I looked at the site on my iPad, and it actually looks so much nicer to me because the Poison Squad isn't on the same level as the other ones. And it isn't until you're on some of the pages that you realize that there's this 6-block chunk of pictures with the diagonal out of them, that that's a structure. So now this way, it just looks like one of these things. It's not like the other, and it's wrong. So I don't know whether there's a way to kind of, and I know it changes in every visual orientation,
Yeah.
but that's the one thing that kind of struck me is like, what's up with the Poison Squad? Why isn't it conforming?
So Dave's taking notes on that. So we'll take that to Justin.
Right. And so I could think if you did have a static thing that was, I know you don't want to have it say news, but highlights or something. And I think when I looked at the college page after seeing this, I was like, oh, it's so white and
Yes.
not attractive.
No, it's
So-
not done.
So that's, yeah, I'm kind of curious if there is an effort to think about more images for the local sites.
Yes. Yes, the current college, I don't have it up, but the college page you saw, that I kind of was holding off on showing them because they're not done. But yeah, it's very white right
Yeah,
now, very sparse. And
So, but you do think that the individual sites will might have the option to kind of
Yes.
move modules?
yes, and Jesse's working on it. I know that this will probably shrink. This navigation here will shrink up. I think she's going to find a way to get more a visual and more of a customizable feel to it. so
And
that
is
you
there a
can
way
do what
that
you want.
LWS might be able to tell us what are the popular links? These were things that I believe we chose 3 years ago, just thinking that they might be what people
Yeah,
wanted to know.
so anytime you want stats from us, we can give you the Google stats and
Okay.
or show you any of the most recent heat maps. You also have access to the Jetpack stats that are in WordPress. You should still be able to view those at any time. And that should show
I'm
you
not
links.
sure I ever knew how to do that, but
Oh, okay. It's in the dashboard.
Okay.
If you go into your dashboard and just look for Jetpack, I think you should be able to find it, and we'll help you.
Okay. And then finally, just to give a plug for visuals, I know that every time we've asked anyone, like library ambassadors, how they heard about the program, it was like library website. That's the one thing that they mention, even more than social media, as the place that they found out about things. So there is a way that I would say that we should kind of keep using that territory.
So going back to the homepage and the search box, I just wanted to share. So I'm with the information school, and our graduate students don't see the drop down box for the catalog versus databases,
Yep.
et cetera.
We've gotten that feedback.
Okay. So my additional point was to say if there's a way that they can just patrons can search everything at one time. It is something that the Ohio State University libraries do. That could be a way to circumvent the fact that people don't seem to know what it is that they're searching.
Yep.
Just throwing that out there.
So two things. One, yes, we know that this is it's too subtle. Yes, thank you. Oh, that carrot is going to get changed, and Jesse's working on making that bigger and better. The other thing is how to do a full federated search, right? A full thing. That there's a couple things on that. So our discovery team is more on that than LWS. That's more of a thing. And I think there's been a conscious decision to not go that route because of the ability, the the more inability to filter and change things for each route. But I am speaking for them a little bit. Also, one thing though is that because we're moving right now into a new backend that will be shared by the catalog databases and eventually fully UWDC and all that, federated search would be a possibility. Because article search is getting moved into our discovery as well, so that would be a possibility. Does anyone know more about that?
Sorry. The idea of federated search is something that WSMT and the discovery team have been debating and analyzing the best way to do it for years. I mean, we know there's ways to do it. There's this bento box approach where you do a search and then it shows up in a bunch of different. And I'm not actually on the discovery team, so it's hard for me to say what the future holds for that. I think right now we're going down the path, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going down the path of when you're within a bucket, so when you're within an articles or databases or catalog, as you're searching that, our direction is going to be, as we see similar things appear in our other buckets, we give suggestions off to the side. So it's not an equivalent. It's not here's stuff from research guides and here's stuff from the catalog and here's stuff from databases, sort of equally weighting them all. It's that you're in the catalog, so we're going to show you the catalog stuff. But by the way, you search for chemistry, there's a chemistry library and there's a chemistry librarian and there's chemistry databases.
That totally needs to
right?
be out
And
there.
so it's where we recognize where you're coming from. And so we target that. And then we say, well, there's some other things too, is the direction.
But yeah,
is that
would
basically
be
accurate, Steve?
That would be a discovery team.
I just have one small follow-up related to the same box. So this is also related to the search box. You said UWDC. I am a relatively new employee of the libraries, and that doesn't mean anything
No,
to a
it
lot
doesn't.
of our patrons.
We know this. So UWDC, this has been one of the biggest issues we've had around searching.
Okay.
And
Say no more.
We've talked to them, we've talked to everyone, and we haven't been able to get a better naming structure for that yet. So wherever we can, we try to put description as to what the heck that is. So on find, we say what it is, but yes, it is. So that's a rough one.
So since federated search is probably not something we'll be doing in the near future,
Yeah,
probably. Going back to the homepage, with the current site and with the new site, our different like buckets that we're able to search in are hidden and always underneath the catalog. I've seen it more often on other library websites where those different buckets are all visible at once as tabs. Like I'm just looking at NC State libraries right now, and most other libraries that I've encountered have the tabs visible, even if they're grayed out, so that you know what your different search options are. This seems like an intentional hiding of the other options behind a button that might not be. Anyway, just feedback. I like as a user, I would prefer to see what the options are all visible rather than hiding things underneath the catalog when the catalog is usually not what my students are looking for.
Yeah, and I know that when like our website before this last iteration did have a tab structure. I feel like if Jessie was here, she might say that tabbing is an accessibility issue and that this works better for screen readers and stuff. But I don't know that that's true. So, but I feel like if tabbing was a better way to do it, she would have done it that way. Yeah, but Dave might know more about that.
So this is another one of those areas that there's back and forth on, and for reasons of accessibility, but also reasons of that balance of reducing visual clutter. And it's been user tested, and decisions get based on that user testing. If they were seeing that there was a problem with this, a big problem with it, absolutely right. Of course, some people are going to miss it, and so some people putting it under the dropdown hides it, and so there's going to be a percentage of people who aren't going to see it. But it is one of the areas here that we do pretty significant user testing on, to make sure, because your observation is absolutely correct, and it's absolutely something that we concern ourselves with. But the user testing doesn't. I mean, yes, again, there's a percentage of people who miss it. There's a lot of people who are completely fine with it. And And so there's a decision that has to be made there. It's okay. I'll repeat it. There hasn't.
From the usage of the large red button, almost no one ever selected off the default. So I mean, just from a usage standpoint, whether or not they're missing it, that's a good question, and you need user testing for that.
I think we need to do more testing around this, especially once we embolden the carrot more and make it clear. I think there is space in here for a possible way of displaying things that could show more. I think it really is going to be what is functioning. And actually, like hearing that if people never change off the default, that's a little concerning.
So. So those are all good questions, and those are questions that need to be routed through either, I mean, those are questions for discovery team primarily, but you can route them through LWS or WSMT, and we can get them there. So I'm trying to be careful here. I'm not trying to defend the drop down versus a tab. It is something that has not been, this particular design has not been deeply user tested, but it will be. It's going to be easier to user test it once it goes live.
Yeah, the red button was tested a lot, and it seemed to be okay. But yeah, the reason why catalog is currently the default, that's a discovery. That's
going back to the button. So we do have issues with students not realizing to click on the thing. If there could be a note that just says click for more options, it doesn't have to be tabs, just any indication that there's more to explore. That'd be great.
I mean, this is really good feedback, so I really appreciate you guys.
Dave, by accessibility, do you mean the difference between the display, say, for example, of a desktop screen versus a
no accessibility?
There wouldn't be room on this screen
No,
to
no.
display those tabs?
When we talk about accessibility, we're talking about people who have special needs with their software. So people with poor eyesight or other ways that they need the touch technology to function for them to be able to interact with it. Whether that's a screen reader that actually reads the text to them, things like that. That's when we talk about accessibility. And there's a lot of ways you can build a website, like putting text in an image where a screen reader will just not see that at all, right? So there's special code that you put into the back of the website to make it easier for those kind of assistive technologies to help people. And there are certain types of layouts that hinder those assistive technologies' ability to help.
If my vision is falling off and I need a much larger font as a display in order for me to read this,
yeah,
will I be able to see this?
Yeah. So I mean, just font increases. Most browsers will do that pretty easily, but for additional types of assistive technology, they work with the browser to, like, it's a program you'd install on your machine. So these people have special technology on their machines to help them use things, and it can make stuff bigger. It can read it to them. There's all kinds of stuff, and we need to make sure that our website functions with those tools so those people can get access. Yeah, one of our major pushes for this is to make sure that it is extremely accessible for people. That's huge.
And it's not just one of our pushes, it's legally required.
Yeah,
so,
but that's not why we're doing it.
It's not just good, it's the law. But it's also not just about changing font size. Sometimes people are doing this and they can't actually see the screen. And so making sure that they can maneuver through our site without seeing the site and then make a choice, and then it communicates to them what changes that choice makes. So those are all this very complicated process that Jesse has to keep into into mind as she's making these decisions?
All right, so it is 11:30. So I just really want to thank all of you for coming and giving us feedback. Dave took notes on all of it, and it's going to be really useful for us as we continue to tweak the site. We'll be in touch with site editors about the freeze and about the changes to the individual websites, the individual location websites, so that people can be ready for that. And otherwise, any additional feedback you want to send us, please send it to lws-lib@list.with.edu. So thanks so much. All right. Yay. And can I